Today we'll talk about crime and IQ again because I finally have the statistics on that I mentioned before. And then later in the episode, we'll discuss Israel trying to influence the youth by working with social media influencers. And we'll close the show talking about PBD's interview with Nick Fuentes. Blacks, Hispanics, and whites can't read. Why you think I started a podcast? It's a fucking racist thing with you niggas, and that's why I'm coming at you niggas next. They love to talk about black violence. Have you heard of white violence? White people commit violent crime at 3 times the rate of Asians. When is Nick Fuentes gonna talk about white violence? Everybody's arguing about their 2 genders. I sat next to her hermaphrodite in math class. Am I allowed to talk about the Jews? If she wanted, we could do it in the morning. Yawning, letting my eyes stretch, baby, I ain't a novice. I've been a dog, she FaceTime, but I never call. So last time, I don't know if you guys remember, but I was discussing crime and IQ. So I finally have the statistics that I needed. And as you can see on the screen, 61 out of 100,000 Asians about commit violent crime, and 182 out of 100,000 whites commit crime, and 556 out of 100,000 blacks commit crime. So when they talk about per capita, they're usually talking about 1 in every 100,000. As you can see from these numbers, I have my phone on me, I can do the math right quick. 64 times 3, well, actually 61. So 61 times 3 is 183. That's saying that whites commit crime at about 3 times the rate of Asians. And 182 times 3 is 546, so close to 556. That's saying that blacks commit crime at 3 times the rate of whites. So that's where I got my figures from the last episode. And this next screenshot is basically saying the same thing, and it's just saying that 2.5 blacks are 2.5 more likely to get arrested for violent crime. They're about 2 times more likely to get arrested for property crime, so not as big of a difference, but they're 4 times more likely to get arrested for drug-related offenses. And then the same is true of blacks compared to whites as whites compared to Asians, because this is saying Asians are 0.5 times as likely as whites to be arrested for violent crime. They're 0.6 times as likely as whites to be arrested for property crime, and they're 0.7 times likely to be arrested for drug-related offenses. So these are the statistics. This is from 2020, and so is the other slide. Also with crime, this one doesn't have Asians, but it's showing that when people discuss crime, they say it's just, not people, some people say it's just racial, and I would say that's mostly the Republicans or the conservatives. And then some people say it's all socioeconomic, and that's mostly the liberals and people on the left. So my stance is that it's both. And after showing you guys the data earlier about crime in general, this is showing you a comparison of whites and blacks, and it shows whites and blacks, but it also shows their parents' income level. So it's showing you race, but also showing you socioeconomics. So as you can see from this, the rate that people are committing crimes is going down as people become wealthier. So that's the left's argument that it's social. But you can also see it's going down from different starting places based upon race. So that's what the conservatives are saying. So if you look at this graph, there's a significant fall from blacks to whites because it's dropping from almost, 21 to 1. And from whites, it's starting at 6 and dropping to almost 0. So there is a racial component and there's also a social component. I think this red is showing a comparison, and for some reason, as it's going down for blacks and going down for whites, it's going down slightly more for whites, but I don't think that's a big issue. Outside of just crime, homicide is a big issue for a lot of Americans, and I believe that's because most people probably don't care about fraud. People do care about armed robberies and carjackings, but what really scares people, and when people talk about they're fearful of crime, I think they're concerned with murder. So as you can see from this data, it's broken down black, Hispanic, Asian, white, Asian as most statistics. And when you look at it, you'll see that, again, like the previous graph showed, as you're going down, as you're going up in poverty level, you are seeing more crime, more murders across every group, but you're also seeing that even at the lowest level of poverty, blacks are above every other group. So this is showing you that per 100,000, or 10%, when 10% of the population is black, it's about 12%. well, not black, but when 10% of the population is poor and they're black, it's about 12 out of 100,000. But when 25% of the population is poor and it's black, the murder rate is all the way up to 36. So as you can see, as you're going up in poverty, you're also going up in crime. And you can also see that regardless of race, the blacks are kind of off the charts with murder. So the murder is a problem. This, I believe someone who is conservative must have posted this because it's highlighting specifically whites versus blacks. And what it's showing everybody is, okay, these are the income levels. And it's basically saying that the poorest whites are committing murder at 7 out of 100,000. And it's saying that the wealthiest blacks are committing murder at 15.4. So basically, when you look at the group of the wealthiest blacks in America, they're actually committing more murder. Well, they're committing murder at a higher rate than even the poorest whites. So just looking at the raw data, you have to admit that there's not crime, but there's a murder problem in the black community if your most wealthiest group of people that are black are committing murders at a higher rate than the poorest group of whites. Again, I think this was posted by someone racist because they didn't even mention that Asians are committing crime at a lesser rate than whites. They didn't highlight that. So if you look at the chart, you'll see that Asians start off at 3 in 100,000, which is very low. And as they go up in wealth, it drops to under 1 in 100,000, which is incredible. Good job, Asians. Well, not incredible, but good. And this is just a diversity map, which would better illustrate what I've been saying so far throughout the episode. As you can see, the blacks, as we said, I say the blacks. The blacks live in the South, and if per capita, if you look at the homicide rate, generally speaking, the murders are happening in the South. And then the next place that murders are happening is on the West Coast, and on the West Coast, it's Hispanics. So the highest percentage of murders is happening in the South, and then the second highest percentage of murders is happening in the Southwest, and that's where the Hispanics are. Last episode, I also talked about IQ. So I talked about fluid IQ, the standard IQ, and also GIQ. So this time we're going to discuss GIQ, which is more like your standardized test. So this particular screenshot is the ACT. And it also converts the ACT scores to an IQ score for people. So this graph is basically showing you everyone's score. The top of the graph is going to be your average. So when fools like Nick Fuentes say the average IQ of blacks is 85, I think this one says it's 88. What he's talking about is the average. Every black person's IQ is not 85. This graph is showing you that it's going up as high as 130 for blacks. It goes as low as 60. But this is saying that in 2024, for the representative sample size or sample group, the average IQ for the blacks was 88. The average IQ for whites was 100. And they set the standard to 100. I know last episode I said whites were at 103, but I'm assuming for this particular study that they did, they just converted everything to make whites the standard. So whites are 100, Hispanics are 91, Asians are 108. That's similar to what I said last episode. And so that people can see that this is not something that was a one-time thing. In 2023, similar numbers. Whites again at 100 because they set it as the standard. Blacks 86 didn't do as well. Hispanics 89 also didn't do as well. Well, 89.9, okay, they did 90. And then the Asians again 107. So as you can see, this is not something that generally has changed. It didn't change much 2023 to 2024. And I've been looking at these numbers for not looking at them for, but looked at the numbers over the course of 50 years. And it hasn't changed much. It did change a little bit 50 years ago. And I believe that happened because I guess next time I'll have to go look into that as well. But my perspective is that the reason there was a change about 30 to 50 years ago was because they had Jim Crow. So at one point, blacks weren't getting the same opportunities as whites. So because they were getting different books, different lessons, less quality education offered to them, they weren't scoring where they're capable of scoring. But now that we've adjusted for that as a society and we no longer have Jim Crow because of Brown Board of Education and other civil rights improvements, I believe that we're now seeing, what the groups are capable of. And because of those improvements, blacks are able to show where they are and they're doing better. I also just wanted to show a an image of the IQ in Europe, because a lot of times when we're talking about black and white, it's coming across like I'm saying, because you're white, you're this, and because you're black, you're this. And that's actually not what I'm saying. This shows that in Europe, there's a range of IQ levels. Everyone in this map is white. There are no black people. Well, there are no black people, but the majority of the people that they're testing are white. So as you can see from looking at this, the Northern Europeans are in the hundreds, high 90s, and the Western Europeans are also in the high, well, the Northern Western Europeans are in the high 90s to 100s. Now, as you go south, you start to notice mid 90s. So that's what I was talking about, Hispanic people. They're 93, the Italians 94, Spain and Portugal 94. And then when you go over to the southeastern Europe, you start to see the scores you see with black people. You start to see 90, 87. I mean, you see 82. I'm not sure what country this is, but this is lower than the blacks and they're white. So I don't believe that we can judge people just off their race clearly. If within the white race there is a range, within the black race there is a range, and it's not a stereotype, but it's more just a general statement when you start comparing blacks versus whites. We can't draw too much from just the race of an individual. As we see, some people call the Southeast Europe the niggas of Europe because they're scoring like niggas. Didn't realize I had this pulled up, but we'll just discuss it since it's here. This is showing the SAT scores, and it kind of falls in line with the same thing we've been seeing across the races. It has male and female. I have not dived into that. Maybe another episode I will, and it's saying who scores what on the SAT. Since I've been talking about Asians, African Americans, Hispanics, and whites, I will just say that 1400 to 1600, it's 27% of Asians who take the SAT are scoring at the highest level, 14 to 1600. For African Americans, blacks, it's 1%. That's a very big difference. If 1% of your population is scoring there, and 25% of another group's population is scoring there. In comparison, the Hispanics are scoring 2% there. Similar to the blacks, there's a larger difference from the Asians. And as you can see from this, whites is 7% at 14 to 1600. So when these people are talking about blacks on social media, I just want to point out that African Americans, Hispanics, and whites are not scoring at the top for the SAT. That is something that is primarily Asians. I got to work on these tangents, but whatever comes up on the screen, I tell y'all what I think. Now, the second portion of this show, or the next segment, is supposed to be about Israel, the Jews, and I believe this was yesterday. Well, no. Next video is yesterday. This is the president of the ADL discussing the current situation, how people feel about Israel in America. I believe the older generation, I call them older, but I'm getting old myself now. My parents' generation, I think they're still supporting Israel. And I think the youth is somewhat split. There are many people who still support Israel, but there are many people, because of social media, who are seeing the news outside of just the filter of the standard or typical media. We're able to see what's going on the ground better because of social media posts coming from Gaza and the internet. So we're open to hearing both sides, and a lot of people under 30, definitely 35, they're pro-Palestine, which is kind of a shift in America, but let's see what the ADL guy is talking about. Make the screen big.
Global survey of anti-Semitic attitudes around the world found a 46% shift. 46% of the adult population, 2.2 billion people, harbor elevated levels of anti-Semitism.
Okay, I thought this was about America, but seems like it may be worldwide, so let me see what's going on.
That's nearly double the rate that we saw a decade ago. For the first time since we started tracking these attitudes in the 1960s, the younger generation is more likely to hold elevated anti-Jewish views than their parents or grandparents. Let me repeat that. The younger generation is more likely to be anti-Semitic than the older one.
Okay, he's saying a lot, and I won't probably be able to unpack everything because I don't agree with what the ADL calls anti-Semitic or a Semite. But he's saying that there's been a shift and less people are pro-Israel. I believe this shift may be because people are able to see the truth, not the truth, but able to see more of the information. So I actually support Jewish people living in Israel. I understand that my personal belief is that Judaism and Jewish people started in East Africa. The religion grew and the people migrated towards Egypt and then into the present day Israel, which is around the Levant, in the Middle East, close to the I forgot what sea that is, but close to the water. The people were Jewish, and then when Jesus came 2,000 years ago, some people continued to be Jewish and other people started to believe Jesus was the Lord and Savior, and they became Christians. So Christians actually persecuted Jews. They murdered them. Have you heard of the Crusades? At that time, Jews were being persecuted. So I believe that in that area, Jews were persecuted and killed. So I understand why Israelis believe that they are sometimes persecuted and have been kicked out of their natural habitat, the region that they're from. Also, after the Christians, the Muslims came. I think that was about 700 AD, Prophet Muhammad. So when he came, they killed the Christians and the Jews. And they kicked many of the Jews out. And that's kind of where the story we have now comes from, is the Muslims were killing Christians, they were killing Jews. And the Jews who didn't convert to Islam, they were exiled somewhere into Europe. I think somewhere Khazar, somewhere off into the east, southeast of Europe. So basically that's true. What the Jews are saying is what Israel and the Jewish people are saying is true. They were kicked out of their homeland and they were scattered throughout Europe. And I'll get into that another time about why they were kicked out of so many places, because there's a lot of places Jewish people have been kicked out of. But it was wrong for the Muslims to murder them and to force them to convert. So they were kicked out. They went various places in Europe and they kept their tradition and religion going. So I think around 1947 or something, 1937, 1947, the whole situation with Hitler, what happened was the Jews from Europe came back to the Middle East. So when they came back, a tension arose between the Muslims who were there and the Jews whose descendants were coming back from the original Jews who had left. So my take on the situation is I prefer a two-state solution where you have the Palestinians who have been there the whole time and the Jews who have roots there. I believe they should be allowed to come back, and I believe the two should live together, hopefully coexisting peacefully. But I understand this situation is tricky because though I want the Palestinians to be able to live on their native land, I think they should respect that these Jewish people were there, not these particular Jews, but their ancestors were there at some point. So I do believe that the Jewish people have a legitimate claim to Israel. So I do support Israel existing. I just don't support the way the Zionist state is coming across to me. It's coming across to me like what Israel is trying to do is blow up all of Gaza, not necessarily kill everyone, but cause a lot of damage, cause the people to have to move, and then make Israel a place that all the Jewish people around the world can come. So I don't support greater Israel, might be the specific thing to say. I don't support removing the Palestinians from their homeland so that Jewish people can move in and have the territory to themselves. Let me see. That was the ADL's person talking. There's another clip that I had of some social media influencers who had just met with Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, nor do I care, because I believe you're a war criminal. Okay, this is a post from Deborah Leah. I've talked to her a few times on X. Okay, let me see here. In honor of asking Netanyahu about Charlie Kirk's assassination and the potential loss of evangelical support. Okay, let's see what the question is that was asked. Oh, make it big.
So something I would like to raise, which was actually my first published paper, was how you and the Likud party are cut from the same ideological cloth as Trump and the GOP in America. And so specifically with Charlie Kirk's assassination, who was a big mentor of mine, he's my first mentor in the space, evangelicals, from all my research, evangelicals are the reason that Israel has been supported in public sphere outside of just Jews. So with Charlie's assassination and with the kind of trajectory that we see with like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, I guess I'm curious about what's another game plan if we lose evangelical support for the state of Israel? What's our backup plan to be strong, like outside of the diaspora?
I did not know that evangelicals were strong supporters of Jews historically, so I'm gonna look into what she said because that interests me. I would like to know more about the situation in the Middle East, and I would like to know why America supports Israel so much, and what groups are supporting them. So I'll check that out. I believe I'm about to play his answer. I hope.
Christian influencers. Okay. You said, you talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant.
So this nigga got jokes.
The woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're loonies. But they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States.
I guess I'm biased towards this man, but hearing a war criminal call other people lunatics is peak irony.
And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of.
That's why I don't like this man, bro. China and Israel have a lot of money and they influence American politics. So why is this man who America gives a lot of money to and Israel gives America a lot of money talking about it's a systematic thing being funded? Israel has a lot of money.
Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster.
Not to go on a rant, but like I'll just wait till I'll wait till another episode to discuss this. But there's a high percentage of billionaire Jews in America, so it's just striking me as ridiculous for this guy to talk about money and talk about how money's being put behind the opposition, the people pro-Palestine, who is a younger voice and a newer voice. That's new for people to be talking about Palestine. It always was being told that we should be pro-Israel. I feel like the money in the media and stuff is being funded by I'm not going to say the Jews, but being funded by people who are pro-Israel. But let me give this man a chance.
Okay. We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community. They're very important. And
any Israeli influencers, you are welcome to come on this show because I would like to learn more about your culture and more about the situation in the Middle East. Clearly, I don't know a lot, but I have an opinion, so I would be interested in learning more for you. And if you're willing to come on, you're welcome.
And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay, and you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that, but we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
followers.
TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential.
We're going to do a deep dive on the Jews because this is just going to be necessary. Now, from my understanding, America didn't want China to have any ownership in TikTok because they had our data. Now, I haven't looked into it, but I've seen some clips stating that some Jewish people are behind purchasing TikTok, which again is ironic because this man is talking about who's putting money behind what. And they're saying that possibly Zionists and Israelis are about to buy TikTok. And what it seemed like he just said was it's very important that Israel is behind buying TikTok. I don't know if it's an error or if people didn't think this was going to come out, but why would it be important that your group is in control of the narrative of the young people? We should just get all the information. So I don't like what he's implying right here.
And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's
Cesspool.
very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend.
I really don't like this man, bro. So like, he's really just publicly saying what I think is a problem. He's trying to influence the information we receive and influence what we believe about Israel and Gaza instead of just letting us have all the information. He's literally saying we have to purchase and own TikTok because we can't let people see both sides. Now he's trying to talk to Elon to influence Elon to not allow people to just share their thoughts. On X, basically it's kind of like free speech more so than some of the other platforms. People of disagreeing perspective and disagreeing views are allowed to, share their opinion. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but it sounds like he's saying he wants to talk to Elon to change what I just said. And it's not get the pro-Israel narrative out. I mean, there's pro-Israel narrative on X now, but it seems like he may be trying to close down the anti-Israel narrative. And that's what I think is a problem.
He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight. Okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends or those who could be our Jewish friends.
Bro, we don't need no direction, man. Just tell us the truth. I mean, hopefully the good and the bad, but just tell us the truth and we can have a conversation. I feel like America would support Israel if they knew, not support Israel, but support Israel. I shouldn't say support them. Would be supportive of many things with Israel if we had all the data and we were allowed to choose for ourselves what we wanted to do. What we don't want is you to present a narrative to us and then tell us to follow your narrative because you may be lying. You may not, but you may be lying.
Could be our Jewish our friends. Are we going to succeed with everyone? No. Will there be a strong counterpoint? Yes.
Me? All right, he seems to acknowledge there being a counterpoint, but what does he want to do with the counterpoint, right? I just want the counterpoint to be able to share their views. And if he's okay with that, then I'm okay with you, BB, as far as that situation. Now, after this meeting that happened on X, I saw with the influencers, that was BB meeting with some influencers. So Deborah, I followed Deborah. She was in it. Yes. And then Emily, who I've seen on X as well, she seems to be over here. So there's a video of her, though, that I saw. And I'm about to play that for you guys right now. Okay, on X, some of the same names pop up. Emily is she's Jewish and she's an influencer. I think she's cool and nuanced. I think her ad is like Emily Austin or something. So you can follow her. To me, she gives a fair and honest perspective. So I think you may learn some things about Jewish people from seeing what she has to say. But the guy in the back, I think his name's Xavier. I had talked to him. He blocked me. I don't know why everybody blocks me, but let's see what this video is about. And yeah, I mean, you can follow Xavier too. I don't have any problems with anybody. This was not funny. It was utterly ridiculous. And I don't think it's going to have any sort of, it's not going to have the effect they want. I don't think this is going to make people more pro-Israeli. So for one, they're calling other people names and calling them anti-Semites for disagreeing with Israel. I'm not sure why. And they're also touching on a bunch of things that people kind of have a problem with. So this is insinuating that Jews have money, Jews are in control of the media, and that Jews are successful when they network with one another. These are kind of all things that people say that they think is negative about Israel. So I'm not sure why they're laughing about it when people are saying that there's a kind of a private, I'm not going to say private organization, but basically the Jews work with themselves to promote other Jews, to get other Jews positions, and to help out Israel over America. They didn't say that, but the jokes they're making, they're almost kind of like laughing in people's face, like saying, what are you going to do if that's what we're doing? I hope that the Jews are not doing that. And what I hope is happening is that Jews are just working hard, which maybe they were trying to say, but it didn't come off that way. I would just like to think that Jews are working hard. Their scores kind of say that. I showed you the scores of Asians, and maybe next episode I'll break down how the Jews score. But I just always thought they were working hard. They were a small group of people, so it's easier for a small group to work hard than a large group. Like whites, it's a lot of them. Hispanics also, and blacks, it's a lot of them. So sometimes if a small group focuses on something, I think, like, for example, I need to pull up more statistics beforehand, but Nigerians tend to do well in America. Well, they're black. So why are they doing better than other blacks? It might be because it's a small group of people. So if that small group of people is coming over as immigrants in a small group, their culture is able to keep their identity, but also easier promote things like reading, promote educations. So I think that also plays a role with the Jewish people in that the Nigerians and the Jews are small populations. So it's a little bit easier to have the families and the group of those people do well because it's not as many people you're trying to get to do the right thing. So with something like whites, it's just going to be a large range because there's so many white people. Well, I'm exiting out this because I'm trying to go to PBD and Nick Fuentes, but this post came from Lily, who I've mentioned before. Okay, the joke's funny, but it's not funny because I don't agree with it. But then she's saying nigga again. This Lily is the nigga girl, basically the N-word girl. But then she posted this. Oh, that's why Xavier blocked me. I need to apologize to Xavier. I know what happened. So she said gay ass nigga, which that's not funny. But then, well, it's not unfunny. I don't know how I feel about it. But then she said, we standing with the Jews and shit. So they got the Jews with the JOO because it's kind of like a joke on the Jews and what they're doing. And then also the joke with the in shit is supposed to be calling black people dumb. But we went over this already. Black people score lower than the whites in America. But, you know, there are whites in America who score low and there are whites, whole countries of white people that score low like blacks. So I don't necessarily agree with Lily trying to make fun of black people. And honestly, I've heard Lily talk and I spoke. I wouldn't necessarily say that she's the brightest. Go to what we had planned. That was just my 2 cent. One of my B Mike, that's my boy, 2 cent. He's done a lot of artwork in New Orleans. You should check that out. I think his ad is at B Mike at Instagram. But I'm about to pull up the PBD and Nick Fuentes interview. It is not teed up, so I'm about to tee that up for you guys.
Very, very talented, very capable, very talented. And I've expressed this before on the show before, but I want to know a little bit more about how you became who you are today. And then we'll cover a lot of different topics. So go to high school, 14 years old, who was Nick Fuentes?
Well, at 14 years old, I was already very political. I've been political since really I was 12 years old.
Why is that?
Well, I just started to develop an interest in politics. There were a lot of political conversations happening due to the rise of Obama, actually, in 2008.
I'm trying to see, all right, Obama is him in 14. I'm older than him because I was in college for Obama. I'm not sure his exact age, but I'm just trying to see what was going on.
2012. And I wanted to know basically everything about it. You know, when you turn around that age, you start to ask questions about the world and how we all got here and, you know, about things that happened before. And so the first thing I ever watched actually was Thomas Sowell.
I'm familiar with Thomas. He's a bright guy. Maybe you should check him out, Thomas Sowell.
On Uncommon Knowledge with, I think,
The best. One of the
Peter
best.
Robinson. Yeah, they're both excellent from the Hoover Institute. And that was actually the first thing I ever watched. And I just devoured it. I devoured everything.
At 12.
Yeah, 12, 13, 14.
Who introduced you to Thomas?
I think PBD might be thinking what I'm thinking. 12 seems a little young to be getting into politics, but he might be a bright kid. He might have noticed some things. You know, let's see where this goes.
Who introduced you to Thomas Sowell?
I just Googled it. A buddy of mine in school was telling me about the private sector. I said, what is the private sector? You know, what is the economy?
I'm chuckling because it's not just him that's bright. Another 12-year-old was looking into the economy and looking into Thomas Sowell. I don't know what school. Maybe he was at a gifted school. Let me see. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
And so I just Googled it on YouTube, and that was the first thing that came up. And I watched the whole thing, and it was just, I was enamored by it. And I told my mom, I said, I want Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. That was the first political book I ever read. And one day I came home from school, and it was there on my bed, and I read it.
First book is Free to Choose.
Yes.
Capitalism, free market capitalism. And he was it's really him and Thomas Sowell. I think he came before Thomas did, right?
He did, yes.
Right.
Yeah, well, he was from the Chicago school. So it was Friedman, Sowell, and all the others. And so I read all that stuff in middle school and high school. And at that time, I was really a libertarian because that's just what was out there at that time.
I consider myself a libertarian. I believe in individual rights. I try to kind of follow with the framers. I don't follow the slavery aspect. Some of the amendments were good. like freeing the slaves. But I try to follow like the heart of what the four founders wanted. And I believe they wanted a society where people's individual liberties were very important and people weren't overtaxed, for example. So I consider myself a libertarian. He said he was. I don't know if he still is, but
at that time, that was during the Ron Paul Revolution.
And the Fed.
Right, and the Fed. And there was so much online digital content, this is early 2010s, that was being put out by young libertarians. So that's just what was out there and what was available. And so I worked through all of it. Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, and read about all the Chicago school, even then the Austrian school, the really more libertarian economic stuff. And in high school, I was in Model UN, student council, speech team. I was very active in high school and, one of those precocious autodidact.
I'm learning about his background. I didn't know all of this, but I can see that he's been gaining information on the things he's talking about for years. So sometimes I see clips, I think he's talking crazy, but maybe there's more to him than you or I may think, because what he's discussing is things that are true and
act type young guys. And
Were you like this? Were you this vocal?
Oh, yeah.
Were you this intense?
yes,
So did you get in trouble? Did you get in a lot of fights? Did you get picked on? Did you have bullies?
I was very outspoken. I was very extroverted about politics. I was always getting in political debates in class and in Model UN, but I didn't really get in trouble as much. What's really funny, this might interest you actually, and I've talked about this before, but when I was in Model UN, I was one of the best guys on the team. I would win.
maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but I'm going to just start calling him Mr. Speech and Debate since he was so good.
First place every week. And because if you don't know Model United Nations, you simulate the United Nations General Assembly or the different committees. And it's like role play. It's like a role play game, but for the United Nations. And anyway, so I was one of the better guys on the team. And my junior year of high school, I became the head of the team.
I was playing sports in high school, but I was following politics a little bit.
Became the secretary general of the team. But I had a major falling out with the guy that ran the team. He was ethnically Arab, I think,
Okay.
extremely pro-Palestine. And I, at that time, was very pro-Israel. I was on Prager University.
Shocker. I didn't know this, but at a point, Nick Fuentes was pro-Israel. I mean, that's a big gem to me. It came out of left field.
And Breitbart. And so I downloaded all the dogma from the conservative movement at that time. And so I remember we were sitting in the study hall one day and they had all the flags of the world hanging up on the ceiling. And I said, why do we have the Iranian flag hanging up? I said, they're the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. It shouldn't be up. And he told me, you got to read The Israel Lobby by John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt. He said, you got to look at the other side. And we had this like vicious back and forth about it. And that is kind of the only major problem I had with faculty over politics, ironically. Now,
So he was faculty.
yes.
Okay. So how many years older was he from you?
Oh, he must have been his 40s.
And this school, walk me through the demo of the school. Is it a public school? Is it a private school?
It was a pretty affluent public school,
Okay.
mostly white.
Got it.
Outside in the suburbs of Chicago.
Naperville with the...
It was Lyons Township
Okay.
in Western Springs, LaGrange.
Okay. So it's not like it's Chicago. It's a good area of Chicago.
Republicans obviously have dog whistles. I was actually liking the interview. I'm learning some things about Nick, but I don't like PBD saying Chicago because I pick up on what he's saying. Chicago means black people. And when he's saying black people, he's not just referring to any blacks. He's talking about poor blacks. He's not just talking about any poor blacks. He's talking about violent blacks. And he's probably not just talking about violent blacks. He probably specifically means the murderers in Chicago. I don't think the murder class represents black people. And I don't know why you would call Chicago. It's kind of like implying that real Chicago is the violent blacks or the murder class of blacks. I just think it's like, I think it's it's racist, but I just think it's a little too hard on black people. It's picking out the worst group and trying to say the worst group represents the blacks and that the worst group represents Chicago. So PBD, you seem like a cool guy, but I had a problem with that. It's a little racist, bro.
Mostly white. And would you say politically center, left, don't care, Republican? What would you say the demo was?
I would say it's pretty center left. It's very Catholic, some Catholic, some Protestant. But what was interesting about it is very liberal, but not leftist, not very progressive.
Okay, so in my head, how I kind of separate politics is people call them, extreme will go to the right. Leftists would be the people all the way to the left on the spectrum. And then, I say leftists would be all the way to the left on the spectrum. I would say liberals are a little bit more in, and then I would say the moderate Democrats. I wouldn't call myself a moderate Democrat, but the moderate Democrats are almost where the libertarians are. I'm a libertarian, so I think that's in the middle, libertarians, and then I think you would have the moderate Republicans, and then you might have the alt-right, so the conservative Republicans. Well, Republicans are conservative, but the extreme conservatives would be the alt-right. Just kind of setting an understanding in my head of what he's talking about.
So even though we were in the middle of a very progressive revolution under Obama, I mean, these guys were all liberal, but they weren't communists. It wasn't like New York or Portland.
So what you're
Never knew that New York and Portland were communist, but okay, I do see that they're liberal. And New York, I don't think is as liberal as Portland, though. I mean, Portland is very liberal as far as sexuality, as far as how they treat criminals. Yeah, New York is somewhat a mix of conservatives and liberals. Portland is pretty liberal across the board, almost leftist, I guess you could say.
Year is this when you were junior in high school? This would make it what?
2015.
2015. Okay, so this is, has Trump yet announced anything?
So he announced August 2015. So it was actually right around that time.
Got it. Okay, so you're there, you're getting into these debates in junior year, and then Trump announces, and then what do you do?
So after Trump announced, this is right around the time, so actually he announced in June 2015. And so I was very political, obviously super engaged with the election. And at that time, so this was going into my senior year of high school, I had a radio show on the high school radio station and a TV show on the high school TV station. I did both. And one of my first shows I've ever done in my whole life was talking about the election. And that was a very crowded primary. It was like 17 candidates. I don't know if you remember back then.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back then they didn't think Trump was going to win, but also just the more I see from Nick, I mean, he has a breadth of knowledge. So I need to definitely look into him more because he seems to be knowledgeable about these things and been gaining that knowledge through a course of some years. And I'm just surprised, shocked, really.
It was Trump and this huge
Everybody,
field. Yeah, it was everybody. And so I went through all the candidates, and initially I was very anti-Trump because I was a libertarian. So I was in it for Rand Paul and then Ted Cruz. And it wasn't until April or March 2016, about 7 months in to my senior year, that I really went in hard for Trump. And Trump, I would say, is the one who red-pilled me, quote unquote.
He's all these guys. These are the guys we're looking at, right?
Right.
That was a Jeb Bush started with $140 million. He was supposed to win it. Carson had a little bit of momentum. Cruz was one of the guys that people thought could do something.
Right.
Nobody thought Trump.
Bobby Jindal from Louisiana. Shout out to New Orleans, always uptown.
Up until I think Ann Coulter's like, who do you think today's going to win? And she made the comment that I think it's going to be Trump on Bill Maher. Everybody starts laughing.
Right.
Okay, so you're in this moment. Trump red pills you first.
Yes. He red pills me on immigration, really. Because at that time, I am preoccupied with this notion of individualism. Very much like you. I mean, a lot of the stuff you say in your show, I agree with you 100%. I guess he reoriented my perspective about individualism. Because what I started to understand is that, you remember, in 2015, it felt like the left was unstoppable. It felt like Obama and then Hillary Clinton were going to lead this progressive revolution, and it was just going to get more left every day forever. More pro-woman, more pro-gay, more diverse. And
he's hitting on what the left is about. They're trying to get better things for women. They're trying to get better things for black and brown people. They're trying to get better things for homosexuals, transgenders. I agree with that. I think that everybody should be treated equal. I think everybody should be treated fair.
At that time, what felt so suffocating was this kind of political chokehold the country was in. The media's left-wing, Hollywood's left-wing, the press is left-wing. And what woke me up about Trump is one day I was watching the primaries, early primary elections, and Trump was winning all of them. He didn't win the Iowa caucus, but he won in New Hampshire, won in Nevada, and I remember the media was beside themselves, calling it every day for him. And I said, the one thing that Trump has right is he understands in order to take power, well, in order to do what you want to do, you got to take power first. In order to take power, you have to engage the media.
Okay, I'll probably watch the rest of this later, but I do agree that the media is biased, and I do think that Trump took the right approach by attacking the media because people saw that and Trump came and exposed that. So what Nick is saying again is true. The media has a narrative that they want us to follow, and I think I may dig into who's behind the media to kind of find out why it is that way, because you would think that the media will want to give you both sides. I think that the CNN, Fox, MSNBC, now they call them MS Now. I do think they give you both sides, but they give you both sides kind of from a moderate look. So they'll kind of tell you what moderate Republicans think, and they'll tell you what moderate Democrats think. They tell you a little bit about the progressives and a little bit about the leftists, and they talk a little bit about the alt-right, but I think they don't give you a lot of information about those groups, and I think a lot of people are outside of just the center. I think it's a fringe, but I don't think the fringe is a small group. So I think that what the news should do is kind of open up the door so we can see the whole perspective and not just kind of see slight right, slight left. I think we should hear what everybody's thinking on the ground, even if we don't agree with it. And I think that if they opened it up, we might have better conversations and more people in America could find more options and see where they actually stand. Instead of just picking between Democrats and Republicans, we may have a breadth of ideas we're choosing from to see which direction we want to go as a country. So hopefully the media and the people find a way to get more voices heard and more perspectives out there, because I think it would help America greatly. I'll see you guys next time. Comment at Critical Commentary on social. We have criticalcommentary.tv on Instagram, X, and TikTok. And then my X is Lil Mo Music. Oh, your screen recording can't be saved. I didn't hit anything. I just hit stop. I literally just hit stop. Tell me when you want me to go. That's all on. Show was closed. The producer saw that people left comments. He's excited. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate people watching it. It has 100 views and we hadn't really told anybody yet. He posted it without telling me what he was going to post, of course. But Just Lisi Dene said, I'm here for it. Love you. Dallin Burton says, looking forward to it and subscribed. Thanks, bro. Just Gorm says, you and me both after the last social temperature. I can't see the rest because I got a screenshot. That's why I probably should have put it up on YouTube. And Ominator 707,000 said, ride on, fam. Stay safe and true. My nigga. Blacks, Hispanics, and whites can't read. Why you think I started a podcast? It's a fucking racist thing with you niggas, and that's why I'm coming at you niggas next. They love to talk about black violence. Have you heard of white violence? White people commit violent crime at 3 times the rate of Asians. When is Nick Fuentes gonna talk about white violence? Everybody's arguing about their 2 genders. I sat next to her hermaphrodite in math class. Am I allowed to talk about the Jews? If she wanted, we could do it in the morning. Yawning, letting my eyes stretch, baby, I ain't a novice. I been a dog, she FaceTime, but I